Hello. Today I'd like to talk with you about attachment. Attachment, of course, refers to the special kind of bond of affection that develops between an infant and the infant's caregiver or other important people in the infant's life. As it turns out, the kinds of attachments that we form early in life influence our development in important ways, and the kind of relationships that we will experience later in life. So, two early researchers who are associated with work on attachment are John Bowlby in England and Mary Ainsworth in the United States. And Mary Ainsworth developed a creative and fascinating sort of research method to study attachment called the strange situation that you will have the opportunity to learn about in your reading. So Mary Ainsworth involved infants and their mothers in this research. And she had a special room with a one-way mirror where she could record what was going on. This room had some toys in it. And she had different conditions in the study, and she took each infant through each one of these conditions. It involved going into the room with the mother. The stranger comes in, the mother leaves, the stranger leaves, the mother comes back, those sorts of things. So she wanted to see how the infant reacted in those different kinds of situations. And in fact, in one of the conditions, the infant is in the room by him or herself for a little while. So through her research, she was actually able to identify three different patterns of attachment. Then later, another pattern of attachment was identified. You'll have a chance to learn about these types of attachment in your reading, but I thought I would mention them to you. Children who are securely attached to their mothers. I say mothers, but that would also include fathers or other special people in the child's life. We'll just use the word mother. Infants who are securely attached to their mothers use their mothers as a secure base, the go-to person when they feel anxious. If you've ever been around little infants, you've probably noticed this. If they're in a new situation, they may be more likely to cling to their mother. When they get up to the age where they can move around independently through crawling or eventually even walking, when they come into a new environment, they're probably likely to cling to their mothers. But as they feel more comfortable in that environment, they'll probably venture away from their mother and explore the environment. And if something happens that makes them feel a bit uncomfortable, they will probably come back to the mother to be soothed. So this is a process that Ainsworth noticed in her securely attached infants. When the mother left, they would experience some distress, but they welcomed the mother back, literally with open arms, and they were comforted by the mother and very happy to see her. If you've ever worked as a nursery in a church where parents drop off their children on their way to the worship service, you probably have observed some of these kinds of attachments that we're talking about, including secure attachment, which is the most frequent type of attachment that Ainsworth observed in her study. Another type of attachment that she observed, a kind of insecure attachment, is children who have what she called an avoidant attachment. Children with avoidant attachments, they are not very connected with their mothers. They're not especially comforted by their mothers when they might experience some distress. And they're not especially comforted when their mother returns after leaving the child in the room in the Ainsworth experiment. The third type of insecure attachment that she noted is called ambivalent attachment. And in ambivalent attachment, children showed conflicting feelings towards their mother. On the one hand, they might have a tendency to cling to the mother, but on the other hand, they might also show anger towards the mother. So they would vacillate back and forth in the way they reacted to their mother. Infants who showed an ambivalent attachment pattern. And the fourth type of attachment pattern that was identified a little bit later on in this research work that was done is called the disorganized, disoriented attachment pattern. And these infants had sort of a deer in the headlights look when they were in the strained situation. They froze up. They didn't know how to react. It was rather pathetic the way they behaved in that situation. And sadly, some of these children have developed these attachment patterns in dysfunctional family situations that lack any sort of stability or consistency. Later on in our work together, we will look at how these attachment patterns also manifest themselves in romantic relationships in adolescence and adulthood. And it's really very fascinating, I think, to consider how the types of attachments that we develop early in life can affect the kind of relationships we have subsequently, from infancy to childhood, childhood to adolescence, and adolescence to adulthood. I wanted to talk a little bit about two other related ideas to Ainsworth's work on attachment. The first of these has to do with Erikson's first stage of psychosocial development, trust versus mistrust. In order for a child in infancy to develop a basic sense of trust towards others in the world, what do you suppose they need? They need a nurturing, predictable, comforting, safe relationship with their caregivers. Sadly, all infants are not able to have that kind of early experience. But those who do are more likely to develop a basic sense of trust. And researchers have found that by the time children are 3 to 5 years old, they develop what's called an internal working model of themselves in relation to other people that may be basically a trusting internal working model or a distrusting or mistrusting internal working model, which greatly influences how they relate to others. The second related piece of information I wanted to touch on has to do with the early work of Harry Harlow, who with rhesus monkeys looked at how attachment patterns develop. He wondered if attachment had more to do with food or with touch. And he separated little rhesus monkeys from their mothers at birth and raised them with what he called surrogate mothers. These were just objects that were made to look a little bit like a mother, with a face and a wire body. Some of the wire bodies were covered with mesh, and some had been terry cloth covering the mesh, so they were softer, kind of like a towel would feel. And some of the mothers had a bottle coming out from the chest of the mother with milk in it, and for the baby to be able to drink. So he wondered if the baby monkeys would attach more to the surrogate mothers that provided milk, or the ones that provided comfort in the form of the soft covering over their bodies. He did observe that the mothers that had the soft covering over their bodies were the ones that the babies tended to form the stronger attachments to, and the babies used those surrogate mothers as their secure base, in the same way that human babies use their mothers as their secure base when placed in a situation that was unfamiliar to them. Well, that's all for now, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.